the podcast 2.0,
Here we go.
also known as Happy Hour.
Right. Podcasting during
Not brought
happy
to you by, not brought to you by any adult beverage company.
No, not specifically, just alcohol in general.
Yeah, alcohol beverages in general. Please don't drink and drive or operate heavy machinery.
True.
All right, so we haven't been around for a while because
Holidays.
Yeah.
Took a little
And nobody
break.
wants to listen. Yeah, nobody wants to talk during the holidays.
I mean, all the podcasts I listened to were just running reruns, except for like a couple of them. They were like, here's this podcast from June 2022. And it was like such a trip because you would listen to it and these people would be concerned about certain, there was one I listened to and it was like, I wonder if the Supreme Court's going to overturn Roe versus Wade. And it was like, God damn it. They did.
Blew that one.
Right. I was like, oh, this is kind of depressing. Like, that's a world where we're like, we wonder.
You know what I'm most happy about, like now that
that?
we're more than a week into the new year, is I'm not constantly like scrolling Instagram and I have to see other people's years in review. I'm like, can I just be like depressed and like not see your happiness?
Right. Only posting their W's, none of their L's, as the kids say.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I get it. We all want to celebrate the W's, but
keep to yourself.
I'm just kidding.
Make
I'm all for the
video.
W's. I'm all for the W's. I mean, let's just jump right into some good W's, right?
Let's do it.
Like Trey Lance was the quarterback that started the season for the 49ers.
Mind blown.
Right? Like
mind blown.
And they got handfully. I mean they lost to the Bears, which at the end of the season is embarrassing.
Yes. All the teams, the 4 teams we lost to, because I'm a Niner, were embarrassing. Obviously.
Back up to the backup quarterback.
Like, I get, and here's the thing, like, I'm not knocking the kid, but I'm not on the Trey Lance train, if you will. I can't.
I think the problem is they rushed Trey Lance going into the season. And I know it's easy to go hindsight is but yeah. I think you drafted a guy and I think he was 20 years old when he got drafted, really young.
Not only that, like because
he didn't play D1. He played whatever the AA is called now, which is fine. Like, don't get me wrong, right? But he's young. He just wasn't ready yet. The NFL's fast.
And that's the difference to me between the third string quarterback now that we're on is Brock Purdy played college football for 4 years. Trey Lance played it for 12 games. Like, and that's he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. It's what you said. And then to add drama, because it wasn't just Jimmy Garoppolo that was dealing with the drama. So was Trey Lance. He's getting the questions. Oh, wow, you're replacing this guy. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
That's a lot to deal with as a rookie.
And it wasn't necessarily, Trey Lance's fault. I mean, heck, he's just out there trying to make a football team and make a 100. Spot on a roster.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it many times before of Jimmy Garoppolo is a good quarterback.
He just is.
And you could say anything you want about he makes stupid mistakes and throws interceptions and gets sacked and whatnot, because he does, and there's no denying it.
Yep.
But when the dude wins games and gets you to championship games, you can't just say, oh, he's a crappy quarterback. You could just say there's room for improvement, that obviously he's been around the league so long now that we know he's not going to go to that next level. Right. And obviously going into, this season, he wasn't thought to be in the role he got. And they ended up building the offense to work for Garoppolo when they went out and got McCaffrey. And it just turns out that because the offense was rolling when Garoppolo got hurt, right?
Yeah. Oh, it
And
was his best season, I think, by most consistent
and,
best season.
and the big thing, and it's the reason why Brock is so successful, is he doesn't have to make big plays. The big plays will happen for themselves.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you know, the thing about Purdy is he doesn't throw the stupid interceptions. Like, he's throwing a couple balls that should have been intercepted, but he doesn't make big interceptions. There's some times when he gets sacked where I go, "Oh man, great job not throwing the ball
Or
or
fumbling
trying to
it
do
or
something."
right.
Yeah, he just and yeah, so I mean, obviously I'm a big fan, rooting for the guy, but he does things that are truly exceptional for, a backup or a third string quarterback. And I think, looking back at, when he played in college, he was doing those things in college, but he just wasn't doing it for a top tier school. So everybody was like, "Oh, he's undersized. He's not doing it for, a big school."
Right.
So he flew under the radar, and, that's where we're at. So
He's the most successful Mr. Irrelevant by far. But I think too, I
yeah,
think Fred Warner made one of the best points of, this debate,
okay.
if you will, or the, talk about Brock Purdy. He spent 13 weeks of this season playing against the best defense in the league,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like, he's
Yes.
he's Jimmy Garoppolo's at that point backup. So you're on the scout team. You got to play against Fred Warner and Greenlaw and Hufanga. Like, the guys, both wards, guys that are just killing it this year. And those are the guys
Yeah.
he had to play against every single week in practice. And so now you roll out and you're like, hey, I'm pretty experienced right now. Obviously, it's not the same speed, it's not the same game, but I thought Fred Warner made that point, and I was like, shit, that's actually a legitimate point.
And I also think we kind of go into this trap of, if you don't draft a quarterback in the first round, he's not going to be a successful player. I mean, it's been proven many times again. Like, it doesn't matter where you get drafted. It's about
No.
being successful when you get to your opportunity, because most guys get an opportunity,
Yeah.
right? It's like, it's very rare that you get drafted as a backup
Well,
and
who's
you
the
never
Jets
get a shot.
quarterback? That's like, what's his name? I always forget his name.
The Jets quarterback, like their
Yeah, the guy
backup
that
or
got
their
benched.
Fitzpatrick? No, no.
No. The kid that got benched, not Jones. That's the Giants quarterback. Fuck, I can picture him. Anyways, that guy, like, you
Hold
had
up,
all
we
the
gotta.
chance, yeah, you had all the chances in the world, and you're like, no, it's the rest of the team's problem. Like, my guy.
Zach Wilson, and
Thank you. Yes.
and the funny thing is, oh, Mike White, that's the guy we always make fun of, but like Joe Flacco is the backup, and he was not good as the backup, right?
Right. Right.
How many shots is that guy gonna get?
Look, it's obvious that quarterback is a tough position. You have your Tom Brady's, your Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, etc., who are very successful. Um,
Right.
but you're always going to have those guys that are on like 87 different teams. Right. But look at our backup now, Josh Johnson. This is like his 13th team or whatever it is.
Yeah, he's been a career backup, and he's
Right.
I just want to say one more thing about the Jets, and I'm not a Jets fan, but I've watched so many Jets games because I have friends who are Jets fans.
Okay.
The Jets are legit like a good quarterback and like an O lineman away from being one of the best teams in football,
Well, the rumor
right?
is because the Jets have a lot of former 49er coaches, right? Robert
Okay.
Saleh, right? He's the head coach. That's where Garoppolo is going to land. And it's like,
And
I don't think that's the
I
best
don't
fit
think
for him.
Garoppolo is the right guy for that team,
Right. I don't think so either.
I
But
think they
that's
need somebody who's got a little mobility. And Garoppolo, I mean, he's been
does
playing the
not.
last 6+ years in San Francisco. He hasn't played in cold weather, so you're under a bigger microscope, and the weather's going to be, so it's like,
No,
I
you're
don't know.
100% correct. I agree with that. I
But
just know that's been the talk because there's a lot of 49er coaches of former 49er coaches over there.
Yeah, and I think that this offseason is going to be very interesting because you've already seen Derek Carr; he's not going to be returning. I think it's
There's
pretty
another
obvious
guy,
that Lamar is not going to return
right?
to Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Garoppolo is not going to return to San Francisco. They're talking about, does Brady go to another team if he sticks around? Does Brett Favre, or not Brett Favre? I said
Who
that the
knows
other day.
though?
But I mean, Green Bay's got to make a decision about Aaron
Rodgers. Yeah.
Rodgers,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sure I'm missing one or two guys, but like those are big name quarterbacks. Like, and I know that Brady and Rodgers end up being rentals at the end of their career, but they're bridge quarterbacks who can get you to, maybe a year or two, right?
Well, you look
But
at
the
what
other
Peyton Manning did that at the end of his career in Denver.
Yeah, but the other three, there's no reason why you can't get five. Lamar should get 10 years, but like, Jimmy G and Carr are at least 5-year guys, at least 5 more years in the league. So I
Easily.
mean, there's going to be a lot of movement that changes a lot of teams, and the Jets need to get one of those quarterbacks. If not, they're just going to lose again because they got
Yeah.
running backs, they have receivers, they have good defense. It's like,
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I feel like they've made a ton of improvement because they have, but you're still missing a couple key pieces, including a quarterback, a stable quarterback, one that's not gonna blame the whole team for everything, not take responsibility
yeah.
for anything,
Oh, and Zach Wilson there, he just throws interceptions, and they're not even
and then blames
like
the receiver.
yeah, he's
Old.
like terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So
Well, the 49ers
anyway,
are in the playoffs though.
that's
Saturday.
Jets talk. Yeah.
It's just the 49ers
Yeah,
will
let's talk
the,
about this weekend.
the freaking Seahawks. That makes me a little
Yeah.
nervous. I know we're rolling, but when you play a team 3 times, it's like something goes wrong, Ugh.
Well, I don't watch the Seahawks much outside of them playing the 49ers. It makes me nervous because I feel like there's always this rivalry, right?
Mhm.
But Geno Smith has been so bad recently,
He has.
and he turns over the ball a lot that kind of plays well into the Niners, the Niners.
That's very
But you do, but like, what do you think about a rookie quarterback who's only played 6 games? Now it's like, here's the keys. I mean, hey man, we have one of the most lethal offenses in the NFL and
Yep.
maybe one of the best defenses of all time. Don't screw it up.
Look, you're
Because
not
you
wrong.
don't know who's coming back next year, right?
Oh no, 100%. You're not wrong. I think the good thing about that Raider game a couple weeks ago
Okay.
was that the Niners were down by 10 at the half. With a
Okay.
rookie quarterback on the road, I get it. It's the Raiders. Carr wasn't playing, but the defense looked like shit that game.
They did. Yeah.
Yeah, like offense wasn't clicking as well. Like we couldn't get the run game really going. I think the way we usually do. So I think that was a really key game for Purdy, for the guys to come back, for them to rally around him. Like, so I think that was, I don't know if that translates. I just think that was like a really important game right before playoffs. Like, luckily it didn't happen, 10 games ago, happened 2 games ago. I'm convinced that helps. Now, does it? Who knows, but
So the $1 million question is the team getting tired or were we just flat that day? You know?
I genuinely, I like being a coach, being a former player, you're the 49ers, you're rolling, right? At that point, they had won 8 in a row or whatever it was. And
Yeah.
right. And it's all over the news, right? Anywhere you look up on a phone, on a TV, Derek Carr is benched. So I feel like as the defense, you're kind of like, oh, fucking sweet. Like, we don't got to face
What
Carr. Who
Where did
knows
Derek
what the
Carr go
backup
to college
is?
again?
Ah, go dogs.
Fresno State.
Nope.
Anyway, so I had to throw
Thank
shout out
you.
to Fresno.
Brag a little bit. Um, But I think you kind of like, oh, okay. Like, not that you can take a week off, but you could take a week off. I think every once in a while, athletes, coaches fall into that mindset. You're like, oh, well, they don't got their number one guy. Like, cool.
Yeah.
And we walked in and looked like that. So
And
that's what I'm thinking. Like 2 weeks ago, to have that kind of struggle to be down by 10, like I said, like I think that was such a good game for them, and to win it. We won the game. The Niners won. It was ugly,
and
but
at
we
the end
won.
of the day, it doesn't matter how you do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. You got to win the ugly ones too. That's how it is.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a
Next
very
podcast, the Niners could already be out of the playoffs.
I know it's kind of an interesting playoff year because you I think every team is, I mean, obviously some of the teams who are bad, you know, like I don't think the Dolphins are going to, make it past the first round, right? But I mean, I look at who's out there and it's
It could get
very interesting to see because the Bills are beatable, the Vikings are beatable, the Bengals are beatable, the Ravens are beatable, the everybody's beatable, you know.
yeah.
So
The Niners have the advantage of the defense. I think. That'll be interesting if they run into the Eagles.
yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of teams that are vulnerable. I like, obviously I'm biased, but I think the Niners have a really good chance. Now, the big, you know, what the fuck is Brock Purdy? Like you said, like rookie. Um, but the guys seem to rally around him. So that
But
helps.
I think
And
when
they
they
got
went out
CMC.
there,
Like that guy's otherworldly at this point.
well, that's the thing. When they went out there and they got CMC, and they said like we need to do it this year, right? Like because they at that point Jimmy Garoppolo was quarterback, and they recognized we needed another weapon, right? Because we can't
Well,
rely on just Debo and Kittle all the time, and they've
and that's
gotten
what I was gonna
so
say.
lucky because Williams has been good. Ayuk has been, or did I say Mitchell? I mean, right? Ayuk, all these dudes who are just coming out, and I said this, last week. I was just like, at this point, Debo is almost playing as a decoy,
Boy. Yeah.
right?
Right.
And I mean, but at some point, they're gonna just keep pounding the ball with McCaffrey because he plays like every down. If you don't notice that, he plays every single down.
Well, because he
And
can
then
run. You can
yeah,
run him out in the middle of the field. He can catch the ball. That's a big difference maker for him as a
and he
running
can
back.
throw the ball and he can block and he can run through guys. I
Yep.
mean, the dude is a superstar. And the
Yeah.
fact that you have Debo out there and Kittle out there and Ayuk out there, it's like somebody's going to be wide open at some point,
Yeah.
and it's just going to become a beautiful thing.
Well, and I think the really cool thing has been, because you look at what happened. I mean, everyone kind of forgot. I don't think they forgot, or at least I didn't forget. But I think, remember all the drama with Debo? Debo almost wasn't a 49er this year. Like
I
he was
remember
gone.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for him to fall in line, if you will, and just be a part of the team and do what's best for the team and block when he needs to, be the decoy when he needs to, I think that says a lot about the coaching staff and all the drama surrounding Debo, surrounding Jimmy G, and Trey Lance, and now Brock Purdy, and all the injuries at the beginning of the year, and then bringing CMC in. That's
Right.
a lot. Like, I don't know if everyone's favorite coach,
I don't
including Tyler's Kyle, should win coach of the year, but I think that's really, they had a lot of drama and it's come together quite nicely.
I think Shanahan should be fired for trading draft picks for Trey Lance.
Okay, I
That
can get
was
on board with that. I can get on
so
board with that.
bad. Why did he trade draft picks for a guy that nobody was going to draft, right?
Oh, especially
To
that
replace
high.
Garoppolo, who didn't need to be replaced, right? I mean,
Well, and like you said, you brought in CMC, and I think that's why Brock Purdy works too, and he's more mobile than Jimmy G. Um, that offense was built for Jimmy G.
Yeah,
And you bring
it still
CMC
is.
and it gets even better for Jimmy G. It's not built for Trey Lance.
We don't. I mean, at this point, we don't really know.
That's
And
fair.
I, I'm curious of your opinion on what they like. Say they win the first round and lose out, or say they lose the first game. I'm curious to see what will happen with the quarterback situation. It I mean, you could still argue, like, remember when Jimmy G came to the 49ers, like, he was lights out for the first, because he played a back half of a season, looked amazing. And
Yep.
then he came in like the next year and he kind of struggled, right?
And got
So
hurt.
it's
Yeah.
like, you know, is that something that could happen with Purdy? And you go, well, we know Jimmy's reliable. He might be inconsistent sometimes, but he's reliably inconsistent. Or, he's reliably Jimmy, right?
Right.
But
You know
I
what
mean,
he's gonna do.
if you go out and you get, uh, killed by the Seahawks this weekend, you might be second guessing like what they're going to do with Purdy. I don't know, and then what do they do with Trey Lance?
I, so obviously
That's what
I
we're
am
here for.
not, I know. It's really tough. It's really tough. I mean, obviously we're fans, but we're also athletes, and you always talk about good clubhouse guys. The I think because of what happened last year and the original, because even remember after the first week, even though the Niners lost to the Bears, who
Yeah,
was it? Somebody went down early and was like, Jimmy G's gonna get it was Dak. When Dak went down, Dak
right.
Prescott, and they were like, Jimmy G's gonna go to the Cowboys, like right away. And then literally the next week, Trey Lance got hurt, so it was good that nothing happened. But I think the Niners are eager to get rid of Garoppolo. It seems that way, and I think that's a shame. Like you're saying, he's Jimmy. That's fine. Um, caveat
I
always, he's so fucking hot. But the point is,
I
I don't think they expected Brock Purdy to be this good, because if you look back, there was when he first came back in for Garoppolo, that when the game he got hurt, and he
mhm,
comes in, and on Twitter, all you saw was that one play when he came in early in the year, and he like went the wrong way on a handoff, and it was a mess. And it's like, well, this guy's we got the best defense and we're rolling, and now we got to bring this fucking guy in. And it turns out he's great, right? So
yeah.
now you have three high-level quarterbacks, two very successful. Trey Lance, you don't know quite yet. Fuck, I don't know. I'm guessing the Niners are going to try to get Jimmy out of there and get something for him.
Well, he only
But-
signed a 1-year contract, so
oh
there,
shit, that's right.
unless there's an
So never mind.
option. I don't. We don't have a stat guy this week, but
That guy's
unless there's a club option for that they could pick up, but I
which
think
I think
he's
they
going to be
should. Well, and there's a chance. I don't know what kind of
we should pull this up because we look stupid.
well, no, I was gonna say I don't know what kind of contract Purdy's under. I don't know how rookie, contracts and young guy contracts work in the NFL.
I don't understand.
Like, does
I
he
don't
go and
understand
make a
football
ton of
contracts.
money for the Jets, for the Ravens, for these other teams that need a quarterback? Because I don't think he's
Okay,
gonna want to be a backup anymore. Call me crazy. I think he should be
okay.
the number one quarterback of the 49ers. That's what I think.
I can't see anything that says anything about a clause for Garoppolo.
Jimmy.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I mean, and yeah, I think it's very hard to. I don't know. There's so many cases of guys who play really well and then they kind of flame out after
Yeah.
a short period of time. I think about like Nick Foles and even Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
No, Carson Wentz. Yeah, Carson Wentz.
Mhm.
And guys who are like that, who are just like, and again, and I'm not saying that he's going to make it back to the team, but Garoppolo's been so consistent over the years he's been with the 49ers. You know what he's going to bring to the table next year, right? And you can design an offense around that. You know, do teams watch tapes about Brock and they go, "Oh, we can figure this guy out now that we've had some time." And is he going to make
Absolutely.
those adjustments? You know what I mean?
Right.
And those are the things that, like, that's the risk you take with a guy. And I don't even care where he was drafted, but you're talking about a rookie quarterback going into year 2 where he's got a big target on his back.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially if the Niners win it all or go deep or, whatever it is. I have a feeling they're going to go fairly deep into the playoffs.
Okay.
But yeah, why wouldn't he have a target? And the Niners, because it's not just Brock Purdy. Obviously he's the quarterback, but he brings with him one of the most lethal offenses. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people would kill, right, in fantasy football for that lineup on offense, right? Like, or any NFL team. Some NFL teams don't have any wide receivers that are like steady and can catch the ball consistently and make plays and get yardage. We have 3, include
Yeah.
and a tight end and a fullback, and like that are just really fucking
And a
good.
fullback, and a good fullback too.
Right. Right. So, he brings with him a train of just awesome. So does that
Yeah.
protect him a little bit from kind of the exposure that you're talking about next year? Possibly. If though all those guys stay and, blah blah blah.
I know I don't want to look too far into the future because, I mean, look at the Super Bowl champions of last year, right? They were terrible this year. So you can't predict, like, you might
Right.
have a roster similar to what you
Oh, the
got now,
Rams.
and you might win 4 or 5 games.
Yeah.
So, you never know. But
I,
I'm very optimistic about the playoffs. I honestly think, like,
I
I think the 49ers can win the Super Bowl just because they're the hottest team, and I mean, they're so hot, and they're legit the best team on paper. Like,
yeah,
right? I mean, they have the best offense, and I've said it over and over times this year. The 49ers have one of the best defenses of all time right now. Like, you're looking
absolutely.
at one of the best teams of all time.
And we haven't
So if
even
they win
talked
a
about
Super
Nick
Bowl, it's
Bosa. That
yeah,
man
that's what I'm
is
saying,
running
man.
people over on the regular.
Yeah. So
I agree.
So awkward situation here.
Okay.
Apparently, you need to upgrade if you're not using. If you're, I only have 5 minutes left.
Okay. Can we stop your feed and do my? I know it doesn't translate as well.
Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. And we're back.
Da, da, da.
New beer.
Same. I like ran out to the
um. So this is the new segment, right?
yes.
And now we know that we only have like 38 minutes to do this, uh, which is fine because I don't think we want to talk about this next subject for 40 minutes.
Sounds good.
So let's talk about everybody's favorite subject. Going to the voting bowl. No. Let's talk about politics. Let's talk about politics, man.
A little bit. So we have some
So
California drama this week.
yes. What's the
Yes, we
drama?
So the fabulous, let's be honest, Katie Porter, her district changed a little bit, but she's in Orange County. Won this year. Barely won a race, but won it. Perfect. She announced a couple days ago that she is running for Senate, which, the Twitterverse went bananas. It's been a little dramatic here in California. She's going for Dianne Feinstein's seat, mind you.
Okay.
Dianne Feinstein is like 92 years old right now, and it is well documented that she has some cognitive disabilities, if you will. And if she runs
Okay.
again, she's gonna be like 98 at the end of her term. I'm sorry.
So she
Uh
hasn't decided one way or another.
Dianne Feinstein has not announced anything. Whether it be she's not gonna run, she's gonna run. She hasn't said anything, or her camp hasn't said anything. But Katie Porter just came right out and was like, boom, running. So that upset
Do you,
a couple of other Congress people in California that I assume were thinking of running because they made a statement. Ro Khanna, who I think is from Northern California, and Adam Schiff, who's from down here in Burbank, made roughly the same statement, which is like, hey, California's been having a ton of flooding, right? We were in a drought for 20 years and all of a sudden it rained a fuck ton. So it was flooded everywhere, like real flooding. And they were like, it's not fair. You shouldn't announce when people are suffering in the state. And like, I get it. I get what they were saying, but I also think that's kind of the perfect time to announce, like, hey, politicians that you've elected in this state are ignoring the plight of climate change, if you will, if you want to go with that route. And I'm going to address it. Like, that's what it seemed like it was. And they got kind of mad because she just came out, was like, running.
I I have a question for you because and I'm curious what the impact of it would be.
Yep,
So she was in a fairly close congressional seat this time around.
she was.
Is she going to run again for her congressional seat, or is she just going to run for the Senate?
So, as far as I can tell, she is shooting for a 2024 Senate run. So,
Okay,
House seats go for 2 years. You are elected for 2 years. So, I think she would abandon her House seat and run for California Senate.
gotcha.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that if she didn't win that, well, I guess she would know there would be primaries for, so she might know before the primaries. And
Yeah.
I would say it's, you never want to say it's safe to assume, but you got to think that the Democrat's going to win the Senate seat. Um, and I think she's pretty popular amongst Democrats.
Very.
So I see what you're saying about like maybe the timing's questionable, but I mean it's like the last, I don't know, 6 years, 10 years, whatever it's been. There been a good time? We've been in constant chaos,
Right.
you know.
Right. That's why I thought it was like, I get what they were doing. It was a political, looks like they were thinking of running for Senate. I think so many Democrats in the state of California are gunning for Dianne Feinstein's seat. Like, she's been in the Senate as a representative of California since like the 1970s. Like, it's bananas. So
Wow. Yeah.
like, she's been there
Well,
for a
and
long time and done some really good
and I
things,
think
done some questionable things. But I think her age and the documented kind of, like I said, cognitive issues has put some younger Democrats in the position to run. Like I said, Katie Porter was just like, bam, running, don't care about anything. Like, don't care about the politics, don't care about anything else. She's gonna take her whiteboard to the Senate.
and I think of the Democrats that you mentioned right there, and obviously there could be more,
Yeah,
that she's probably the most liked,
I think so.
like Shift, obviously, I think he's liked amongst Democrats, but not all Democrats. Same with Swalwell.
Yeah,
And I think once again, we're gonna have a situation where it's gonna be somebody who's gonna be in that seat for a long time.
yeah,
So you want somebody who's and the cool thing about Katie Porter is like before she was in Congress, she was just kind of like a normal, like, I hate to use the word soccer mom, but driving a minivan, right?
right. Yeah,
Like very,
I think that's the advantage that she brings. She's a single mom. Um, so I remember her listening to a different podcast and she was on it, and it was right around the time where inflation started to be really, really bad and really, really impactful on normal people. And
yeah.
I remember her talking on the podcast about it was like her and a handful of other Congress people that were kind of like, quote unquote normal people that didn't have a ton of money, didn't come from a ton of money, didn't have these high powered jobs prior to coming to Congress, and being like,
Mhm.
hey, a bag of groceries is fucking expensive right now. And like she was talking to people in Congress, specifically Democrats, and they were like, is it really? Like she was surprised how genuinely surprised they were. And she was like, yeah, fuck, do you guys not buy groceries? Like I gotta buy Lunchables for my kids, So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, especially in pockets of California, but really everywhere, relate to that. Like, oh, finally, someone that like buys groceries, goes to get gas, drives a
Right.
minivan, like has a kind of normal or quote unquote normal American life and is like, hey, this kind of sucks. Like
Yeah.
she really does speak to that a lot. And she's brilliant at going at questioning. She's very much a professor, which was a past job of hers. Like she's a good teacher, you can tell, that does those
Yeah. Right.
probing questions, the ones that you need an answer. We've all been in school. So I think that combo really does her a lot of favors and it makes her really popular, especially in the state of California.
Yeah, and I look back to, you hear what some
Get her on
people
the
say about like,
pod.
please join us. Um, no, but you hear about like some things that people say about like Kamala Harris. Like she is, the way she interacted in Congress, like she was very like, we talk about the double standards of being a woman, and I imagine being a woman of color, it's a triple standard, but like
Right,
she comes off as like fiery and aggressive, and people don't like that,
right.
and I think Katie is more likable in that sense. Like she goes more through explanation than she does like, oh, I'm smarter than you, so I'm just going to keep throwing all these like questions I know the answer to. You know what I mean? So
I think the big difference between the two women from California, uh, Kamala Harris has a lawyer's background where it is kind of putting you in your place a little bit. Like she did that brilliantly, I thought, with Brett Kavanaugh when she was like, can you tell me, are there any laws that govern men's bodies? And he was like, what? She was like, I need you
yeah,
to explain, I think that's and Katie Poor is a very teacher, very professor, very teacher, where she's not going to put you down, but she's going to walk you through this journey where she puts you down. Like,
right.
if that makes sense. I think that's the difference between the two to me. Um, and I think that, like you said, I think that might help Porter a little bit more than it would uh Vice President Harris.
VP, MVP. I don't know. I was having this really interesting debate today. Um, it's really. I think we go. I'm going to step back a second, just because I think when you're in this like, especially political bubbles, like you end up tending to not talk to many people with other ideas,
For
even
sure.
amongst your own party. Like I think people don't quite recognize that like people within their own party have different ideas on how to do things,
Oh,
yet
100%.
we always pretend like, oh nope, you're a Republican, you think this way, oh you're a Democrat, you think that way, you know
Right.
what I mean? And when really it's not true. But even like, amongst just your typical Democrat and your typical Republican, I don't and I think this is what's really hurt our country over the last, and it's been my adult life because I voted for Obama when I was 18,
Hmm.
right? So 2008 or 2007, 2008, whatever year that was. But like since even up until that point, like Trump had been questioning whether Obama was like an actual citizen, which created a lot of turmoil. And Sarah Palin, uh, threw flames, threw gas on the fire.
Hmm.
And I think in my whole adult life, there's been there's been doubt in the presidency and politics in general. Like, is government good for you, right? And I was having a conversation with somebody today who is Republican, and we were just talking about the economy in the sense of like, the cost of going to the restaurant is expensive, or the cost of going to the grocery store is expensive. And it's just like, I don't think that there's one person to blame, Republican or Democrat, of like why all these things are happening. But we need to have these conversations not only amongst ourselves but our politicians, and that's why like what happened in Congress last week was a cluster, and it's going to be continue to be a cluster, because unfortunately we've seen over the last couple presidencies of is if you don't have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, you're not going to get anything done,
Yeah,
and
everything
that's
comes to a
dangerous.
screeching halt.
And that's where we are right now, you
Yeah.
know and we're and everybody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, it's regular people. I think given the chaos of last week and the very, very extreme uh members of the Republican Party, like what they're asking, if you actually Chip Roy of Texas, he was like, uh nothing's getting done at the border that I like. So let's defund. Let's just cut off funding to the Department of Homeland Security, which takes care of the border. And it's like, call me crazy. That doesn't make sense. So I think, one thing I saw this week, there's, fuck, I don't remember which Carolina it is. So I apologize to you people in the Carolinas. Go Bull. Her name is Nancy Mace. And I think she's from South Carolina, but she could be from North Carolina. Please fact check me on that.
We're checking it right now.
She was taught, so the Republicans in the House tried to pass a couple of abortion bills, right? As if the fucking Dobbs decision wasn't red flag enough that they weren't very successful.
Right.
After, when people were voting on it. But they were trying to pass some very, very extreme abortion bills, and they're never going to pass the Senate because it's democratically controlled, Democratic president. It's never going to pass. But she was on CNN, I believe it was, and she was like, look, this is stupid. And I like, she's a Republican, and she was like, if you want to actually, you're never going to stop abortion. If you want to minimize it, I'm totally on board with that. Like, let's talk about birth control and universal access to birth control. And I saw her interview and I was like, oh my God, this is great. Cause it's true. Like, yes, finally someone that has a reasonable conversation about this issue. And then she turned around and voted for the very extreme abortion bills. And it's like, well, you got on
But
TV
did you
and
so this
talked
was
about it.
South Carolina. This was South
Okay.
Carolina. In
Yeah.
South Carolina's Supreme Court struck down the state's ban on abortion after 6 weeks. Did you see that?
Yeah,
And the
right.
big
And
thing
that's
was about the right to privacy.
right, which is in the
So
Constitution.
and I guess I don't know the details of it, but like it seems like it got struck down.
No, it did, but I'm talking about she's a part of the Congress.
She's a she's a Congress lady from
federal, yeah.
South
So
Carolina.
there were a couple, thank you for clarifying which Carolina. There were a couple of abortion bills that the House, I think, passed, but she was on TV talking about how extreme they were, how it wasn't going to make a difference. It doesn't help anything. And she was saying like, hey, can we come together and like basically make compromises, saying like, okay, well, if you want to minimize abortion because you're never going to get rid of it, let's talk about birth control and how do we, give access to that, blah, blah, blah. And so she's on TV saying that. And I was like really encouraged. I was like, wow, that's really, thank you. Finally, like someone that actually can talk rationally about this, like you were saying, actual production for like regular people. And then she turned around and voted for these bills that she was like ragging the shit out of. And it's like, well, fuck. What good is that?
And it's so weird because I think they're like ever since the Kansas vote last year,
Yeah.
like there's been the writings on the wall that like w- women are like majority of women, whether Republican or Democrat, are voting in favor to uphold women's rights, right? And
Weird.
abortion being one of them, right?
Right. Right.
And I think that Republicans are seeing the message that we can't keep trying to fight this. Like they've already won technically in a way with
100%.
loading up the Supreme Court,
Yep.
but I think they're seeing in the way of like if we keep trying to take women's rights away, like long term, it's not good for the party. We need to find other avenues. So I think that abortion is going to kind of go to the back burner for Republicans.
I mean, they tried to vote on it. I think, like I said, it passed the House, but it's not going to go anywhere. So it's more of a performance vote, if you will, to, those quote unquote pro life. I hate saying that term for obvious reasons. But like we'll see if they learn. They could be more extreme. They could try to pass a 6-week ban or some of the things that have been going, a bounty law like they did in Texas. Like
Yeah.
there's a chance they try. Like I said, the crazy thing about a divided government, meaning the Republicans control the House and the Democrats control the Senate and the presidency. Um, Not much is going to get done. Now, I mean, Joe Biden had uh Democrats across the board, Democratic hold, but like in the Senate, you had very slim, and then you had Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. So, he got a lot passed in those first couple of years with a very
Yeah,
close.
and I think the bigger concern
Mhm.
is the way the government is structured is that you either need um a majority like you almost need 60 people 60% right to
In the
get stuff
Senate. Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is you could say I mean it's always like 55-45 each election. We haven't had an election in a long time where it's been like 70-30. You know what I mean? And I think at some point it needs to be recognized. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's like there are things that we are pretty hard line about, but we need to stop like going after those issues and just start like focusing on things that are really going to benefit most people, instead of just having these stupid like I mean, look at what's going on in now in the Congress where they're gonna have these stupid hearings about like Hunter Biden's laptop. I mean, great. I can't wait.
I always say, if you want to talk about corruption in government or people trading off of family names, like let's talk about it. But that's not their goal. It's not
No.
the goal with these hearings. It's to strictly go after Joe Biden, um, because he's been really successful in a lot of ways. In other ways, he hasn't, but in a lot of ways, and that's all it is. It's Benghazi
And
all over again.
well, yeah, and and the other thing is, and it's interesting because it came up this week of like, obviously we don't know what documents, Joe Biden had sitting around. We don't know
Right,
what kind of classification. I mean, we don't know what classification they were,
right,
I mean,
right.
it could be ugly. We don't know. It
Well,
could be
and a
ugly.
special counsel was appointed today for that
Right.
reason.
And it is worrisome because I mean, we're talking about, political feel like we don't know what was hiding in Mar-a-Lago. We don't know if Obama took anything. We don't know what Jimmy Carter took in 82 or whatever.
It's so true.
That he's still hanging on to, but that is a concern. Like, don't get me wrong. And I think it should be investigated. Like, I think people should be accountable for their actions, but it shouldn't be a witch hunt of like, you know,
But
of
that's what I'm
it,
talking about. Like
yeah,
if you want to address corruption, right? Like, how many times does the Pentagon have to fail an audit where, oh God, sorry, $30 billion disappeared? Like,
Yeah.
if you want to talk about that, on board, like, let's talk about it, because it really does royally fuck over regular people on a regular basis, right? But that's not the goal. It clearly stated not the goal. Um, so it's gonna
Yeah.
be,
I
just for
and
show and a waste
Yeah,
of
it's
money.
a mess, dude. And I I keep thinking about like how backwards the way we do politics is here, but it's like it's not as backwards as like, Britain is, or
Right. We're really competing for who's worse at this point, but you're correct.
but I mean then you look at like and I'm constantly amazed. Yeah, January 6th, the riots that happened, was a bad thing for our country. It's a stain,
Oh, for sure.
Um, but I mean, look what happens in other countries when elections don't go their way. Like,
Well, like,
look
it
at what's going
just
on in
happened in
Brazil.
Brazil. Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not just Brazil. It happens all over the world every year, right?
Yeah.
Yet somehow we still I mean, January 6th was supercharged by multiple things, like, but we generally have a pretty civil, society. Like, yeah, we do have murder problems and that, but I mean, compared to other countries, we're kind of middle of the road. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
we haven't had an overturning of the government, in what 200 and something years, so
Yeah.
we're doing
Last
okay,
Civil War.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's it feels like it could, I mean, as bananas as it sounds, it feels like it could go either way, where things will get so extreme and so out of control and affect so many people. And like you kind of like you were saying with the abortion stuff, like, you've already begun to see that, where these laws are being implemented in certain states and women are like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, no.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, at least, like, is some of this stuff gonna get so extreme that regular people start to push back in the way they vote, in the who they vote for, and just be like, listen, this is not okay. Like, can we get a little compromise? Can we give a little take here and there? Like, I'm curious to see if that's how it'll go. I hope that's how it'll go. Um, but we may have to go through some really extreme things, uh, issues,
Well,
dramatic,
I mean,
before we kind of
I'm
move to
I'm I'm
that
not
place.
gonna I'm not gonna have any excuses for what happened in the midterms. Um, I think obviously, I think going into it, for the last year before the election, it was there's going to be this big red wave, and Republicans are going to take both houses, and
Mhm.
they're going to gain a bunch of seats
Easily.
in both houses, and now they have a slim margin, and if you count those like I don't know the exact number. They were saying 20 when they were doing the speaker vote, but
Yeah.
let's just say it's 5 to 10. That's not enough to like if they want to be complete dicks and and like vote against something just to not like pass it.
Yeah.
They have that power to like piss off McCarthy and Republicans, and they have
What they
enough
did
to
all
do
last
upheaval,
week.
is what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
the big thing that you have is, the media ecosystem, where does that get to regular people? But I feel like people, like you said, like the last 3 to 5 years, I would say, or so, is some of these things are affecting regular people. And so you do look back and you're like, wait a minute, I can't do that. I can't vote for that. I can't support that, whatever it
right.
is. Um, yeah, I think, and that's what
I
I mean. Like, are things gonna get so extreme and then kind of
Right.
like take a few steps back, which is gonna fucking suck, but You know,
Well, and
is
I
that
think the
what we're
big
going to have
thing,
to do as a country?
yeah, and I think the big thing that people are concerned about is, the amount of money that was spent during the pandemic that, has caused, partly has caused inflation. Um, but not fully because it's happening worldwide. So it's not just the US.
Yeah,
Like,
I was going to say also corporate greed.
well, there's corporate greed, but like, so like for me, I work in the automotive industry, right?
Yep.
And we're having issues producing parts because like let's just say microchips, right? The
Yeah.
microchip shortage where
Big thing in cars.
you need rare material, rare minerals and materials or whatnot to make it. You need the factory floor to build it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff, like microchips, like especially early on in the pandemic, the thought was there's going to be a big uptick in home electronics, so like TVs, Xboxes, iPads, stuff like that. And there's going to
Peloton.
be other people, and yeah, and there's going to be a big drop in people driving, so we're not going to need as many like microchips for transportation.
Right.
And we ended up needing both. So factories made this decision early on. We're going to scale down our car production and we're going to ramp up the other production. And we ended up like being a year plus behind in production on microchips for cars, right? So that's
Oh,
part of.
wow.
So what does that cause? Well, let's just use microchips. Let's just pretend that was the only thing it needed. Well,
Yeah.
now the cars that can get microchips are going to be worth more because people need cars, still.
Right.
So it's just going to drive up the cost of the car.
Right.
And that happened with everything within our society.
Right.
I mean, cereal,
Milk,
gas,
baby formula.
milk, baby formula,
Right.
everything you can think of has had this because there's been some sort of time where there's been a shortage in material and people needed the product, so they were willing to spend it.
Right.
Oh, 10-minute warning.
I
10-minute
know.
warning.
That's so crazy.
It's fucking stupid. Anyway, so not to go on this tangent of inflation, but I think like people are so like wrongfully skewed about it on both sides.
Oh, 100% on both sides. My favorite.
Like
So
I heard this thing about like and to talk about uh Joe Rogan. I was listening to Joe Rogan and he said, if people were just complacent with what they had, everything in this society would be so much better. Like if you never needed another cell phone or you never needed another TV or
TV,
you never
right?
needed another and you just accepted technology as it was, people would be so much happier because they wouldn't need all this extra money and they wouldn't be like constantly working for it. And
Right.
it's true,
Yeah, he's not
you
wrong.
know.
It's a like massive, very expensive form of keeping up with the Joneses. You know, that old phrase. You just need the new thing. You
Yeah.
want the new thing. You go in the store and there's the new thing. And it's a little cheaper than it was before because, it's a little we have more of it. But it's still pretty
But
fucking expensive.
but let's think about this for a second, right?
Yeah.
Um
It's
your
more than we
phone,
rent.
well, like a new iPhone, right? If you go to the Apple store and you just buy a new iPhone, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at spending between 800 and like $1,400 for just the phone. You're not paying for the plan, you're not paying for any of the services, but the product is only going to be good for 5 maybe 5 years. And at some point, the app producers, the cell phone towers, the software updates, they're no longer going to support your phone. So you got to go out and you got to go buy another one,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Even though this thing takes like better pictures than they had with the camera they sent to the moon, right?
Every once in a
And
while, every once in a while. I know it makes me sound like an old, I'm 36 years old, but having grown up with that technology, literally, every once in a while, I watch a video on my phone and I marvel. Like, I'm just like, holy fucking shit. remember VHS is like, and it goes through my brain and I'm just like, I'm sitting here. I would never, when I was like 10, know that this
I
was a
watched this.
thing.
I saw this Instagram video of like these kids who were trying to figure out how to use a rotary phone. Like their dad was like, "Here, use this."
The
And the kids are like
struggle.
trying to hit the buttons and they don't know what to do.
Exactly. Oh my God.
But the rotary phone worked perfectly fine. It still works perfectly fine. Like
I
it
was,
served its purpose. But it's
it's
now
those,
obsolete because of
no, it's like
supercomputer in your hand.
those refrigerators, right? They're from like the 1970s that are, you could sit in it during, the Holocaust, not the Holocaust, the Armageddon, and you'd be perfectly fine. You'd be totally safe. And
Yeah.
like, but now you buy a refrigerator from 2021 or 2022 and it breaks down in 3 years because all the technology broke and it's old. Like,
Yeah.
but
I
that one
my
that your
aunt
grandparents had, like,
dude, my aunt was telling me about that, and I was like, because she just bought a new house and she wanted new appliances with the house,
right.
and like she comes from the generation of you buy something and it lasts for 20 years, like refrigerate. Like legit remember my grandmother having a refrigerator that was like 40 years old, nothing wrong with it,
That's what I
right?
mean. Right.
And she's like we were talking about like she bought these, I think it's new Samsung stuff, and it looks really nice. And she's like, "Yeah,
100%.
they'll probably last 5 years, and then you
Right.
got to buy a new one." And I was just like, "What?" And that stuff's not cheap.
At all. No, you're right. It's it's so crazy. It's so crazy. But it's, I hate to say it, the world we live in now. That's just how it is.
And it's not for better. I'm sorry. I
It's
mean,
not. It's not. It's what you said. It's not making anyone happier or making anyone's life really that easier.
it's yeah. So I don't know. So Katie, if you're listening, we'd love to talk
Get
to you
on
about
the
this
pod.
stuff on here.
Get on the pod. I would die. Oh my
It-
God, I would freak
okay,
out.
I'm thinking about this, right?
Yes.
Off
Talk to
season, we get Brock Purdy and Katie Porter on.
Oh my God. I would be so excited.
We'd get at least 10 subscribers. Oh, by the way, you
Exactly.
should subscribe, right?
Subscribe,
Comment.
shout out, tag them in the comments below to be like, hey, you need to be on this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, we'll do almost anything, you know.
We like to talk and we like to talk about a lot of things, sports,
Yeah,
politics.
Tyler might be here, he might not. We might have a new person here. Like it might be Shauna and replacement Tony.
We're keeping our
Or
options
two
open.
other people. It could just be like two random people we don't know yet
Neither of us.
doing
We're
our
excited
podcast.
though. First pod of 2023. It's good shit.
We're gonna have to make some decisions, Shauna. Like, are we changing the name? Like, are we
I don't
still the same?
know. I was thinking two guys and a girl, like little
That's kinky, I guess.
taken. Oh no, it's not Jesus Christ. The pizza place one. Am I too old for that? Is that the am I the old in this situation where I knew that show? Ryan Reynolds, shout out to Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, that show? Oh my
Thank
gosh. Yeah.
you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we're not doing two guys and a girl. We don't have two guys.
Well, we
Where's
had
the
two
other guy?
guys. I don't know where the other guy went. He's like a dad or something. Nightmare.
He's it's okay. He's here in spirit. And Kyle. Hey, I saw a pic. Speaking of which, because Kyle definitely watches this podcast. Um,
Obviously.
I saw a picture of him on Instagram. He's got a really good beard going on. I was just like,
Hey,
good for you, man.
good beard.
Like,
Always time for a good beard.
always good time for a
Shout
good
out to
beard.
me basically dating Ryan Fitzpatrick.
How's that going?
It's great. He's so great.
Oh, okay, good. So, like, of all the work bullshit you have to go through,
That's what I'm
Ryan
saying.
Fitzpatrick is still amazing.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is solid. First time in my life. First time. Ryan Fitzpatrick feels very stable. The rest of my life, my job, completely gone to shit. And that's
I'll
why
say
he's
this
great.
as we only have like 2 minutes left here. Um, so obviously the other man in our other guy He was trying to he was pushing some other business ideas, which I totally support of like having business ideas. Like, hey man, you
Okay.
don't just lay around all day doing nothing and then just come up with a great idea. You know what I mean? Like
That's
you
true.
got to spit them out there, and it's just like, even though you might not agree with it, and it might be, we're trying, right? Podcast,
Fair.
we're trying, right? YouTube channel, we're trying, right?
Trying.
You're trying with doing multiple jobs. You're trying with, it's just like we all have these little side hustles going, which I
Yep.
think is good, because at the end of the day, it's like, if nothing comes of them and we're just like back here, in a year, and we're still doing the same job we're doing, we learned something. We learned that wasn't for us,
I like it.
right?
I like where your head's at, Goble. 2023.
Big year, baby.
All right, friend. Cheers.
What's next week? So we got to talk next week.
We got to hopefully talk about the 49ers still being in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, playoff. Yeah.
There's plenty of drama, right? We can talk a little Angels baseball, just signing a fuck ton of outfielders that aren't good. And we could talk more politics. We could talk more life.
Hey, and if anybody wants to hook us up with a Zoom subscription,
we're in the market.
We'll make you a title sponsor. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, share, and have a beer.
Yeah. Cheers, everybody.